Hello everyone, thank you for joining me for this webinar. Today we're going to have a look at stock management and look at some of the functionality that we have in SAP that will help you to manage your stock better. A few of the specifics that we're going to look at. We're going to look at how items and stock is recorded in SAP, look at the item record and explain to you what some of the controls are that you can have and visibility that you can have over the stock that you have in your warehouse. We will look at how SAP can allow you to record batch and serial numbers against any of the stock that you have, which will allow you to see which batch or serial number items that you're buying from specific suppliers and where they are being sold to. We will also look at warehousing functionality, so how you can organise your stock in different warehouses and even subdivisions of those warehouses into individual bin locations and some of the controls that you can put in place around that. Finally, we'll look at MRP and how you can use MRP, which stands for Material Requirements Planning, to really satisfy the demand that your business has for stock, to make sure that the stock holding that you have is sufficient to meet demand, but you're not carrying too much stock. With that, I'll get into the demonstration. So I'm going to look at an item master data record here. And I'm going to search for, so we have this in find mode already. I'm going to search for an item that I have already set up, which is this carbonated orange can 330ml. So the first things that I would like to speak about is this whole area at the top section. We define item codes for the items. These can be automatically generated if you require, or you can key these in and define these yourself. In addition to that, we have our normal fields such as description. We have descriptions in foreign languages, but I'd like to go into some detail in the capabilities that we have around unit of measures. So here we could see for these drinks cans, I have a specific unit of measure group set up, which is called 6/24 box. And if I drill into this, you can see the way that this has been set up. So we have at the base level, which in this case would be a can, we have one can being represented as one unit. We then have a secondary measure, which is a box, and a box which you could recognise as being a multi-pack of cans. We have 6 units equaling one box, and similarly we have a carton, so that can be a tray of cans of soft drink in this case, and we have 24 of those equaling one carton. The reason that we have this in SAP is we can use this logic and functionality to drive 3 areas of the system. The units that you purchase in. So you may, for example, buy the pallet load from your supplier, but you would like to sell by the box to your clients. And even then you may have a different unit of measure for your stock keeping, where you would like to count in terms of number of units or litres or whatever the value may be that you would like to count internally. SAP can handle all of this complexity and allow you to streamline your purchasing and process while keeping great visibility within your warehouse. The next area that I'd like to look at is pricing. So here we can see that we have a price list currently selected, which is the base price, and in the primary currency, which in my system here is pound sterling, we can see what the price is for the particular unit selected, which is the individual can or the units in this case. We can set up pricing for different units of measure if we so desire, and we can set up pricing in additional currencies. We also have multiple price lists. You can have as many of these as you would like, and as you can see, you can define different prices against different price lists. Not only that, we can have prices being based upon other price lists. If you had, for example, a 20% markup on your cost, you may elect to have a sales price which is based upon that formula. All of that we can do within SAP. Over here on the right-hand side, we have our flags that allow us to define something as either being a stock item, a sales item, or a purchase item, and we use these flags to dictate and control whether we can add these items into sales documents, purchase documents, or whether it is an actual counted stock item. So moving along these tabs, we can delve into some of the additional functionality that we have and the controls that we have around item master data. So when I go into the purchasing data tab here, we can see this is the area where I define not only who I buy it from, so this is my preferred supplier, but I can have many of those suppliers and options if that's the way that your business works. I could also define in here the size of package that I'd like to purchase from my supplier. So in this case, we're going for the maximum size, which is the full carton. And I could also define rates and duty rates that I would be subjected to pay if I were to purchase this item. Very similar in the sales data tab, except we're defining how we would like to sell the item. So in this case, I have it set up to be sold as cartons. That could be any unit of measure you would like. So if you're buying by the pallet, selling by the box, this is the area that you would define all of this in. Moving over to the stock data tab. Some very nice functionality that we have here. First of all, in terms of finance, we can define how we would like any stock-related transaction posted to the general or the nominal ledger. In this case here, I have a number of mappings set up on the item group, which in this case is just actually items, and I'm telling the system wherever I sell this item, I want the revenue posted to a specific area in the general ledger. Wherever I have stock of this being held on my balance sheet, I want that stock to be posted to a specific general ledger account code. How do I, next area, unit of measure codes and names, how am I representing the quantities of stock internally? So in this case, I'm telling the system I want to count by the individual unit. Again, this can be defined separately. You may decide you want to count by box or by pallet or whatever unit of measure is relevant to your business. Over here to the right hand side, I have my minimums and maximums. Now I can define these at a warehouse level so that I can make sure that I have enough buffer stock to see me through any situations. Here in this case, I'm defining this across the whole company. So I need to make sure, or my aim is to make sure that I have 48 units available at all times to deal with any unanticipated sales demand that I have. Valuation method. Valuation method, we have several ways of valuing your stock in SAP. This one is a moving average valuation method, but we also have FIFO standard, and we could actually value your items by batch and serial number collection. So you can have individual valuations per batch or serial number. Down here in this grid is where I can have an overview of all of my stock holdings. So we can see here that I have a number of different warehouses that I have defined, the main warehouse, the bin warehouse, and the fast food store. And in each of those, I can see what my current stock is, what stock I have committed, so that may be for existing sales orders that we have on the system. What has been ordered. So in this case, this would be any purchase orders that we have that are currently outstanding, and we're waiting for the supplier to deliver those. And finally, what we have available, which is a calculation of what we have in stock, less what is committed, plus what is ordered, and that's what we have available at points future in time. Now, we can see here that my bin warehouse has some entries here when it comes to bin location. So you can either enable or disable bin locations for individual warehouses in SAP. So if I drill into this bin location here, it will give you an idea of some of the controls and restrictions that you can put in place over what happens in bins. So we can see here that down at an individual bin level, I can give these bins descriptions, I can give them codes, but I can also say things like I would like the quantity stored in that bin to be above a certain minimum quantity, below a certain maximum quantity. It should not it should not exceed a certain weight if you're using any racking in your warehouse, for example, and you're dealing with any heavy products. And I could also set further controls to say that I only want to have specific items from a group. I only want to have an individual item in an individual bin and don't want to mix and match. With SAP, you can define all of these things and you can restrict how things are moved in and out of bins. Okay. So moving on to the planning data, something that I'll come on to very soon is with regard to MRP. And MRP will be looking at what is defined in the planning data here. So in this case, I'm telling the system that I would like this particular item to be subjected to an MRP scenario. And this works, by the way, whether you're a manufacturer or whether you're a distributor who would maybe buy product and then sell that to your clients. MRP works with both situations. So whether I buy or whether I make this will dictate whether I need to purchase from my supplier or raise production orders. But in this case, this product is something that I buy and sell. How often do I order this item? So you can define different schedules so that it sits in line with your purchasing plans, and you can purchase these as and when are needed, and the MRP scenario will look at these schedules and make suggestions to purchase or make whenever the schedule dictates. And we also have some regular controls that you would expect. So what multiple do I order in? Is there a minimum order quantity? What is the lead time from the supplier? And what do we have in terms of tolerance days? So if we are 1 day away from the ideal order interval, do we go ahead and suggest that we purchase anyway? Over here, I'm not going to go into this in great detail, but there are some settings and visibility that you can have if you're a manufacturer, where you can actually see some details about numbers of components that will be made to make up this item and look at costs in terms of what it would actually cost you to make an item. Moving over to properties, we have 64 of these properties which can be named as you would like, and it's a yes/no tick box so that you can start to categorize or your item master data. So you may have items that you would define as being fast movers. You may have items that you would define as being low margin, high margin, restricted items, whatever that may be. And the reason that you might want to use this functionality is virtually in every report and every screen that involves an item in SAP, you can start to filter your reports and get insight into only the areas that you're interested in by selecting and unselecting these properties. So moving over to remarks, we can have an area here where we can have visual representations of the product. We can have any marketing or notes that you would like to have in here. And moving over to the last tab that we have here, we're looking at attachments. Now, attachments are very pervasive in SAP. We have them really all throughout the system, and we happen to have one here in our item master data. I have a sheet which is representing some nutritional information, so I can take that attachment, I can view that attachment, I can send that attachment on to my colleagues or clients or suppliers or whoever may need to actually go and have a look at that item. As with most screens that we have in we have the ability to define additional user-defined fields. So this would be useful where there maybe is not a field that is in the general application, but you would like to store some additional information, which in this case for this product here might be flavour. So in this case, I might elect to make a new field which can record for me the flavour of the particular item that I'm selling. But as you can see here, I have a wealth of these user-defined fields set up in my system. And these can be things like yes, no drop-downs. Let me just get that back. Okay, so that could be yes, no drop-downs. It could be any values that you have that you would like to define and make sure that your users select from. It can be numerical values, it can be text values, whatever you would like to go and set up, you can do that, and you can record additional information. So this one's a numeric field, requires me to add in a number. Additionally, we also have the capability of having analytics. So in this case here, we have an analytical view which shows me for this particular item the stock that I currently have per warehouse. So we can have that, and you can, whether it be sales, whether it be stock information, purchase information, these can be defined by the user or by our consultants at your own preference. So you can get a quick visual on exactly what's happening with a particular item. But you have this in other areas in SAP as well. So I'd like to move on to some, let me just close this, and I'd like to move on to some of the additional pieces of information that you can get from the system. Okay, so if I right click, I can access a whole host of other screens that can give me further insights into this particular item. So here, if I were a manufacturer, I might want to look at the bill of materials, i.e. what components and ingredients do I need to use in order to make up this product. We're not doing that today, but I do have some alternate items. So this is really designed for the salesperson, so that whenever you are out of stock of a particular item, you have this screen available so that you can suggest to your clients, okay, we don't have this one in stock, but here are some alternatives that you might be interested in purchasing from us. So in this case here, we have a product which is the same size but a different flavour, and here we have the same contents but in a different size. 500 ml plastic bottle. You can have as many of these as you would like, and you can also reverse link so that when I were to select a particular item, I may want to go and do the opposite relation in reverse. Okay. I can also look from the item master data screen at my stock posting list. So this is telling me all of the stock movements that I've had between all of my different warehouses. So we can see here all the goods in and the goods out movements, and I can split these by serial and batch number so that I can see who we bought specific serial numbered items from and who we may have sold those to. So to activate that, we just simply tick that box, and we could either show or hide information as it would relate to individual bin locations. But we can see all of that information from within there. Going back to the stock data tab, you may remember that one of these warehouses, which is warehouse number 5, I have set to be a bin location enabled warehouse, and currently I have 240 of this item in stock at this present time. If I wanted to gain further insights into that, I might look at the bin location content list. Now here in this case, we can see that of that 240 that we have in total, we have 192 of these in this bin location 05GI, and we have another 48 in another bin location. So it's very easy to be able to get insight into where your items are in stock, where they are in the warehouse, how many you have, and in terms of what you have committed already and what you have coming in, we can look at and available to promise reports. So here in this case, I'm looking at what my current stock position is, and I'm looking at the demand that's actually been placed upon. So I can choose to look at this across all warehouses, or in this case, I might want to only look at my bin warehouse. So I can see that I have 240 in stock at the moment, but I have a sales order that is due to be delivered by the 30th of March. So that's going to utilise some of that stock that we have. Then we have a delivery coming in on the 1st of April, and so on and so forth. So you could see at any point in time what you have available to promise to your customer, which can be good if you have some sales orders that are not due to be delivered for quite some time yet. It gives you the ability to see, can I sell that item today, knowing that we have more coming in future. And the system can give you a quick, easy report that can tell you exactly where you are at this point in time and what you can commit to your customers. Okay. Right. I'll just press update on that. And one final thing that I would like to look at as well is the relationship map. So in this case, this defaults to the bill of materials. So if I were a manufacturer and making this product, I might be able to see all of the components that would be used. In this case, to show you how the screen works, I'll also have a visual on my alternative items. So the alternative items that we looked at earlier, for this item, we have these alternate items here, where we have two items that are similar. One that is a different flavour, so that's the can, which is an apple flavour, and we also have the same orange drink, but is actually in a 500ml bottle. And we can see here that a relationship exists between the same product, so that's our 330ml can with that, so a reverse relationship already exists here. Okay. So what I'm going to look at now is MRP, again, which stands for Material Requirements Planning, and we can use MRP to our advantage to help us to make sure that we have enough stock in place to satisfy demand. So to access that, I'm going to move into my MRP module, and I'm going to access the MRP wizard. Okay, so step one, we go into next. Now we can have multiple different pre-existing scenarios with all of my settings already stored, so that I can just run through the scenario knowing that I have to make minimal amendments, or I can create a brand new scenario. Now I have one here that's already been predefined called drinks, so I'm going to take that scenario and we'll move on to the next stage. Now we have the option, over what period of time would we like to look at the supply and the demand of particular products that we have? And so here in this case, I want to look out 7 weeks into the future and make sure that I have enough stock coming in. And if not, I want to make sure that I place any orders for any shortfall that I may have. So moving on to the next screen, I can do this again, and this is really why you have different scenarios. I can look at all items across the entire company by selecting this checkbox, but in this case, I'm only interested in drinks, and if you have a purchasing team where some of them buy a certain category of product and another team buys something else, whether that might be items you buy and sell, and somebody's in charge of components and so on and so forth, you can split this into different sections. So here I have selected the drinks only that I'm interested in, but I can add more items or remove items from this list as and when required. Next, I'm looking at all of my warehouses. So here I'm saying, do I want to look at this across the whole company, or do I want to start excluding certain warehouses? So a very common facet of this is some customers of Milner Browne will have a quarantine or damaged goods warehouse, in which case you would want to exclude that from an MRP scenario just because you don't want to count that as being good stock and stock that you can sell. So SAP can certainly help you with that. And finally, we have what type of documents do you wish to include in your demand and supply calculations? So things like, do we want to consider the purchase orders that we already have en route? Absolutely we do. Do we have any purchasing agreements to buy bulk loads from our suppliers, we would need to know about this too. Sales quotations, do we need to have any insight into that for stock calculations? Well, maybe the option's there if you want to, but in this case we've determined it's not relevant for our business. And so on. You can choose all of the different items that you would have here. Now, with regard to the minimums and maximums that we had earlier, in addition to satisfying those orders, we may also want to make sure that we adhere to the minimum stock levels that we have defined against each item. And in addition to all of that, we can define forecasts. So in this case here, I have a forecast defined already for my 3 items, which covers March and April. But this can actually be based upon your sales histories. So if I go into here, I'll keep my forecast, but I'll show you how this works. I can generate an intelligent forecast, which is looking over the past sales that have happened, and I'll choose an item here that I know will have a number of sales for. Let's choose this one. So we can see here, based upon a particular calculation method. Now I have my system set to choose from these algorithms automatically, but we can see here that we have 2 algorithms available to look at our previous demand and sales and try to forecast what is going to happen in the future. Now, you can see here from my sales that we've had an incredible spike in sales about at this time in 2017. Now, if we don't think that that's likely to be replicated and might be skewing our future anticipated demand, we do have the option to modify what the past sales were. So I might say, well, the anticipated sales were likely somewhere down here, and this can now influence whatever is going to happen in the future. We may say that we were out of stock at another one of these points in time, and we can increase what we think we would have sold at another point in time. So you can see there that's had an influence over what we think we'll sell in the future. We can also hindcast as well. So if I drag this back just a little, we can start to see what the actual sales were versus what the forecast would have been for that point in time. So assuming that you have enough data available, and you can compare the two to get some confidence that the forecasting algorithms are actually working for your business and do that job. But I already have a forecast here, so I'm going to continue with the one that I have, and now that I have all of my parameters set, I can now run my MRP scenario. So let me expand this here, and it really tells me what it thinks that I need to do. So here we can see my initial stock position. We can see what the supply is, so that's any purchase orders that I have coming in, or what purchase orders that MRP will be suggesting that I place, so that I have coming in this case in week 14. And I can drill down on that. So in this case, I don't have a particular document number. This is a supply that will be coming from the recommendation that MRP is making, and it's recommending that I place a purchase order with a due date of the 1st of April for a quantity of 770. And why is it doing that? Well, that is to meet the demand that I already have on the system. And again, I can drill into this. And we could see that this is actually a forecasted demand. So this is coming from the forecast that we just looked at a moment ago. Once all of that's said and done with supply and demand, we have a final stock position, and you can see here for weeks 15, 16 and so on, we have a quantity of 50 here. This is to satisfy the minimum quantity that we would have defined for this particular item. Okay. So I've looked at that now. I can save these recommendations. I can look at what the recommendations are in a tabular format, so I can see that the system suggests that I order 4 different items here. Here are the quantities, so I don't have these rounded, but I can define that. If I want to go and action any of this, I can right-click, come into my order recommendations, and I can now go and action this. So since in this case the data looks like it could be doing with a bit of a cleanup, I might overtype this and say I would like to order 32 of those, and based upon the prices I have with my supplier, it will now go and update that if there are any discounts that I might have set up. And here in this case, I might just say, well, look, I anticipate some additional demand that isn't on system yet, so I'll make this one 5. Moving along to the right, I have full flexibility to either choose the default supplier that we have, or I can change supplier if needed, change the warehouse, change the date when I require this, change the price that's being bought at, any flexibility that you would like. And once I'm happy with everything, I can select which items I would like to go and purchase now. So it tells me one purchase order was created. And if I now close these screens and look at the last purchase order that we have on the system, so I'll just go to the last one here. We do have an open items list where you can look at all of your open purchase orders. But we can see here that here are the items that MRP, that we have ordered through MRP. And what I would like to do now is I would like to go and say, right, we get to the point where we've received some of those in. So I would like to go and copy this to a goods receipt PO document. And we'll just maximize this one as well, so we can do these individually as well. We do have flexibility, so we might be able to say, right, okay, this one was actually to be received at a later point in time, so we just delete that one from the system, which we have a shortcut for, or we could just right click and press delete. Once I add that to the system, okay, now. What we have here set up is for one of these items, although in reality you would most likely have it set up for all or none, but we can see here our carbonated orange drink, 500 millilitres, has been defined as requiring batches whenever we book in stock or book out any stock. So in this case, although I'm trying to book this stock in, we're hitting a block because the system says, well, look, it's a mandatory requirement that we have a batch number in place. So in this case here, I have a quantity of 5, so that's 5 cartons, and I can say here that we've actually received 2 batches, so it might be batch number 2, and that was a quantity of 2, and batch number 3. We have a quantity of 3, so that gives us the 5 that we actually need. And if I select OK, at this point here we do have a default bin location set up for each of these items, and we can define which bins that the stock will go into. But at the moment, mines will go into the default bin. So now that I've added my batches, we should be able to add the document. And now that we've added the document, we can now see, if I just go and drill into another one of these orange arrows, we now should be able to see that reflected in our stock data, so we can see the quantity that we now have in stock has increased, and we can go back into, for example, our stock posting list, and we can see the quantity that has been received, which matches the goods receipt PO and the whole supply chain process that we've gone through. So that concludes everything that I would like to show you today. But if you do have any questions, I would like to encourage you to get in touch with me or get in touch with your account manager, and we would be happy to answer any questions that you may have.